Salve omnes, welcome to this video lesson. We're going to take a look at what you have on your upcoming grammar review quiz for the Latin 2 honors class. First section on the grammar review quiz is case uses or functions. So the 6 cases in Latin: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative, vocative, no good dudes, accuse able vixens. Just remember what they're good for. What is the use or the function of each? So nominative is for subjects or for predicate nouns. Essentially, that's just a verb, a word rather, that refers back to the subject. So if I say Bob is a farmer, Bob is the subject, farmer is the predicate noun referring back to the subject. So you have a linking verb sentence like is or seems or something like that. You know, he seems good. Good would be a predicate nominative, predicate noun, predicate adjective. And then, you know, it's just renaming the subject. So nominative is for subjects or things that rename it. Genitive, in the song we sing, genitive is for whose or of. So whose in the sense of to whom does it belong? Whose is it, right? That's a possessive, like apostrophe S. Of is a preposition we use in English to translate genitive case quite frequently. All right, for example, I could say puelai, and I could translate that the girls with an apostrophe S, or of the girl. Dative, to or for, so we use the prepositions to or for. Accusative, in the song we sing goals and objects. Accusatives for goals and objects, goals and objects. All right, so goals means where are you going to? That's the direction towards. Accusative is also for direct objects. So when we say objects in the song, that's what we mean, direct objects. So I love you, you is the direct object. I see Bob, Bob is the direct object. Okay, ablative case. This is the most complicated case in Latin because it's actually taking in 3 different functions at once. If we want to do them with W's, we can say where, whence, and with. Okay, so where is going to also include when, because if we're talking about a place in time or in space, you can use an ablative to show where something is in, on, or at, whether you're talking about space or time. So where. Whence. What does whence mean? Whence means from where. So when you translate from or out of, any kind of situation we're talking about from or out of a thing or out of a place, that's going to be ablative. And then finally with. So if I say I run with great celerity, with great speed, okay, that tells how I do it. That's an ablative. If I say I wrote on the board with a dry erase marker, that's going to be an ablative of means. So again, ablative case. So what do we say? You can say by, with, from, in, on, at. Okay, the by and the with are the with type ablatives. The from is the whence or from where type ablative. And the in, on, at is the where or when, showing basically the placement of something in time or space. Or I could just say where, whence, with. That's another way I could do this one. Again, ablative is the most complex because it has 3 main functions. All right, vocative case is the last one, and it's one of the easiest. Vocative is for calling out. That's what we say in our song. When you call out directly to a person or thing. So if you say, you darn door, right? Because you accidentally stubbed your toe on the door. The door is going to be in the vocative case in Latin. Next thing on the grammar review quiz is you're going to have to do 3 declension ending charts. Now, I've got all of these color-coded, so you see the kind of dark red of first masculine feminine, then you get a kind of a bluish one after that, second masculine feminine, and then a brownish one, second neuter, and then so on. We get the third masculine feminine chart, third neuter chart, fourth masculine feminine, fourth neuter chart, and the fifth masculine feminine. Now, you could be asked for any 3 of these. So I might say, ask you to give the ending chart for second masculine feminine, then for third neuter I stem, and then for, say, fifth masculine feminine. I'll just pick 3 of them, and I'll probably kind of try to spread them out. So probably, you know, 1 from the first 3, 1 from the next couple ones, and then 1 from the last 3 probably, just to spread it out there. And let's see. that is that section. So there'll be 3 charts. I won't ask you to do a noun declension. I'll just ask you to give me the endings. Okay, so I'm not going to say, decline puella. I'm going to just say, give me the first declension, masculine, feminine endings. Okay, next thing. When you get to the verb section, you're going to have to do some conjugations in the active and in the passive. So active conjugation of one verb and a passive conjugation of another verb. You have 4 tenses to do. You have present tense, imperfect tense, which is the BA past tense usually, although with sum it's ERA. Then you'll have future tense, which is usually bo bibu or am es et type future, but again, sum is irregular, so you get ero, eris, erit, eramis, eritis, erunt for the future. And then finally you get the perfect tense. Now perfect tense is regular for every verb, so it's one of the easiest ones, even though it's the last one we learned. So that's isti et, imus istis erunt, or the 2-word passive forms like we might see. Where's a 2-word passive? Okay, here's some, like coptus sum, coptus es. Let me just highlight that there, right? So that's what we're talking about, those 2-word passives like we get here. Okay, going back up. So if I were to ask you to conjugate sum, I would have to choose the active because sum has no passive. So if that's on the test, it'll be in the active, and you would have to give me all of these different tenses. So you would do sum ss, sum ss sunt. That's the present tense. I am, you are, he, she, it is, we are, y'all are, they are. Then you would do the imperfect. Notice instead of the BA, you have ERA for this verb. So you get eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratis, erant. Future, instead of like a bo be boo future or an amesat future, again, this verb is irregular. So you get ero, I will be, eris, erit, eramis, eritis, erunt. Erunt means they will be, future. But when we get to the perfect tense, it's totally regular. How do we make perfect active? We always go to the third principal part. So if you look at the principal parts above, sum, esse, fui, futurus, you go to fui, and then you add the endings, isti et, imus istis erunt. The song we learned last year, isti et, imus istis erunt are only for the perfect active on the third part. Did, has, have, or else, simple past will work when you translate perfect verbs, so you sound smart. So, isti et, imus istis erunt are only for the perfect active on the third part. So when we say on the third part, we mean go to the third principal part, which in this case is fui, and then isti et, imus istis erunt are. Those are our endings. So we've got fui, fuisti, fuit, fuimus, fuistis, fuerunt. So that's totally regular there. There's nothing funky about that. There are weird things about sum ss, sum estis sunt, eram, eras, erat. You've got to remember it's ERA instead of BA. Ero, eris, erit. It's irregular. But once you get to the perfect, it is normal. Okay? Now for other verbs, for amo, for copio, for doco, for audio, I might give you active or passive. So I've got some examples here. So if I give you amo, well, I could have active, like amo, amas, amatum, amas, amatus, amant, and then in the imperfect it would be amabam, amabas, amabat, amabatus, amabamus rather, amabatus, amabant. I could give you passive forms. Let me just highlight the present passive here so you can see those. And remember the passive endings are ar, ris, tur, mer, many, enter. So basically you're just putting passive endings on the stem here. Amor, you're taking the R and adding it onto amo. And then amaris, you replace amas, you replace the S with the RIS. With amatur, you're replacing the T from amat with a TUR. With amamur, you're replacing the MUS with MUR. With amamini, you're replacing the tis from amatis with with the many, so amamini. And then finally, amant goes to amanter in the passive. Very similar if you happen to do imperfect passives, like notice down here I've got an imperfect example of doke bomb. So doke bomb, doke bos, doke bot, doke bomus, doke botus, doke bont, those are actives. Then when I go to the passive, let me just highlight it. You notice all we've done is we've changed M to R, S to RIS, T to TUR, mus to MUR, tis to mini, and then NT to NTUR, enter. Okay, all good there. And then, again, I can do active or passive for any of these.
Okay, Wildcats, move on to the next class, please. Time to go on to the next class.
So, any of these verbs, amo, mito, dokeo, audio, copio, I can do active or passive. So, future tense, I might be asking for active. So, for example, like we've got here, this is a Bobi Boo type, amabo,
Okay, Wildcat,
amabis,
it's actually break time.
amabimus, amabitus, amabunt. Those are the active future forms with the Bobi Boo future. And dokeo will work the same way. So dokebo, dokebis, dokebit, dokebimus, dokebitus, and then dokebunt. But when we do the passive, again, we're just changing to passive endings. So let's take a look at that. So I take amabo and I add the R and it becomes amabor. Long mark goes away, by the way. Amabis, when I change the S to an RIS, remember that thing about the R changes the I to an E. So instead of amabiris, we get amaberis. But then with amabit, we just change the T to a tur, so amabitur. And then amabimus becomes amabimur. Mus goes to mur. And then TIS goes to mini, so amabimini. And then the NT in amabunt goes to intur, so amabuntur. Now, if you are doing, say, copio or mito or audio, those verbs have the aset, or sometimes we call it the A and E type future. So future active, if I ask you to do active conjugations, is going to be something like this: mitam, metes, metet, metemus, metetus, metent. If I were doing copio or audio, I'd do copiam, copies, copiet, copiemus, copietus, copient, or audio, audies, audiat, and so on. So in other words, copio and audio, you get an extra I in front of the aset, right? When I go to make the passive, again, all nice and easy. Essentially what I'm doing is changing the endings. So mitam becomes mitar, metes becomes meteris, metet becomes metater, metemus, the mus goes to mur, the tis on metatus goes to mini, and the nt on metent goes to metenter. All right. Last tense. Again here, could be active or passive when you're talking about the perfect tense. If it's active, you're going to the third principal part, like capi or like audiwi, and then you're adding those endings. E istiet imus istiserentar, only for the perfect active on the third part. So, example here, I could do capi, capisti, capit, capimus, capistis, caperunt. Or I might do something like this: audiwi, audiwistis, audiwit, audiwimus, audiwistis, audiwerunt. Now, just as a reminder, this is exactly the same as what we were doing up here with fui, right? E istiet imus istiserunt. All verbs work exactly the same. There are no irregularities for perfect tense. I tell you, even though we learned it last, it's really perhaps the easiest one. So you go to the third part, and you just start adding e istiet imus istiserunt as your endings. Last thing to talk about on verb conjugations are the perfect passives. These are two-word forms. So let me highlight the perfect passives here. Let me just highlight the first perfect passive. Okay, perfect passive of copio. So it says fourth principal part and then the separate sum s sumus estis sunt. So fourth principal part, If you go to the principal parts of the verbs, coptum is the fourth principal part there, auditum for the next verb. So you'll notice what I've done here. I've got coptus aum. Now coptus is the masculine form of that fourth principal part. Copta would be the feminine, coptum would be the neuter. So the way I've got it written up there, copio, copere, capi, coptum, I just defaulted to the neuter. You can do the masculine or feminine, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so how do we make it? We get coptus, masculine, or we get copta, feminine, coptum, neuter, and then we add sum, s, sumus, estis, sunt. So again, you've got two word forms. Now, I will encourage you, just pick a gender and stick with it. So if I were to do, let's say feminine, I would say copta, sum, copta, s, copta, est. And then in the plural, we would use this coptai, right? Because that's the feminine plural. Coptai sumus, coptai estis, coptai sunt. Now let's look at the next verb there. Perfect passive for audio. Again, I'm going to auditum, the fourth principal part. That's the neuter form that I give up there. So you could choose a different gender. Let's say this time I wanted to do masculine. So I would go auditus sum, auditus es, auditus est, auditi, because that's the masculine plural, auditi sumus, auditi estis, auditi sunt. Again here, though, there's nothing irregular. Every verb does this the same. So even if I ask you to do, say, amo or mito or doko, it's real easy. You just go to the fourth part, and then you start adding the second words. So let's say I was going to do masculine of amo. I do amatus sum, amatus es, amatus est, amati sumus, amati estis, amati sunt. Well, that's all of that. The last thing we have is the verbals, okay? So, label chart here. Okay, so we've got, y'all are going to have to fill out. I will tell you like present active imperative singular, and I will tell you which verb. So I might pick amo, or I might pick mito, or audio, right? Whichever verb I want to pick. And then you all are going to have to fill in the 10 different forms. So the present active imperative singular, ama, that's made by taking the RE off of the second principal part. So I go amo, amare, chop off the RE, and I get ama, and that means love singular. Amate, I add the TE to the singular command, and that's love plural. Present passive imperative singular looks exactly like amare, the second principal part. So you just copy it down, and that means be loved singular. And then present passive imperative plural, ama mini. So you take the ama from up above and you add mini to it. And then we get the infinitives. The present active infinitive amare, again, is exactly the same as the second principal part, as in amo, amare. Present passive infinitive follows the normal pattern there, which means you take the E off of amare, the active infinitive, and you change it into a long I, and you get amari, to be loved. Perfect active infinitive, amawisse. Now, we just said perfect. So perfect, remember, goes to the third principal part for perfect active. So notice that amawi is the third principal part, and it has the V in it. And notice that in the infinitive, you're using that same stem. So we took off the I on the end of amawi, and then we added isse, amawisse, to have loved. Perfect passive infinitive. Now again, we just said perfect and we said passive, so remember the two-word perfect passive forms up above. We're going to take amatum, the fourth principal part, and then we're going to put a separate word with it, esse. Now I've got all three genders here, so you can say amatus esse, or you can say amata esse, which is the feminine, or you can say amatum esse. I don't really care which gender you put, so pick one, stick with it, that's fine. Present active participle, amons, amantis. Amons is the nominative and amantis is the genitive. You really only have to give me the first one, the nominative here. So how do we make this? We just go to amare, we take off the RE, and then we add an NS, and we get amans. In here, if you want the long mark on the A before NS, that's fine. Some books give that, some don't. Basically because there's two consonants after it, the syllable's long anyhow, so I don't require it. The very last verbal form is the perfect passive participle, and essentially this is the same as the fourth principal part. So since I'm going to give you the principal parts on the test, if you get to the perfect passive participle, you just need to remember it looks exactly like the fourth principal part, which I will have given you. Now, amatum, which I show you here, is the neuter form. Again, if you want to go with a different gender, you can. Amatus is the masculine, amata would be the feminine, amatum is the neuter. Okay, there are some differences in some of the other verbs I'll point out quickly. So for mito, notice mitete, instead of mitite, or instead of mitete, it's mitite. To explain that, you normally add a te to the singular form, right? So mita is the singular. But if we added a te to that, we would have gotten mitete with an ete. Instead, we have mitite. So watch out for that. It's just something about this verb. And likewise, we might have expected mitemini here, but instead we get mitimini. Hopefully you're used to that I appearing in third conjugation verbs like mito or pono. It just appears all the time in present tense there. Okay, another thing that's different here is that miti looks a little bit different. We might have expected miteri, because normally you just change the final E of the active infinitive, mitere, into a long I. But for verbs that end in ere, short ere, like mitere or copere, these type of verbs, which are third or third IO conjugation, you take the final ere off, the last three letters, and then you add the long I, and you get something like miti here, or copy, right, for the other verb. Okay, and then going on, yeah, everything else is normal. So mississe, we're getting from missi plus the isse ending. Yeah, everything's just normal there. There's nothing else funky. For audio, audi is normal. We get it by chopping the re off the second part. Audite is normal. We just add the te to make it plural. Audire is normal. It's coming from the second part. Audimini is normal. We just add the mini onto audi. Audire is normal, coming from second part. Audire, we're just changing the final E to a long I. And then everything else over there is normal. So audiens, I might note, any IO verb when you go to the present participle is going to have ENs. So copio is going to go copiens there, audio goes audiens, fugio goes fugiens. You're always going to have IE in front of the NS there. Well, that concludes everything you're going to have on your grammar review quiz. So I hope this is a useful review. Study well, do well.